Guys, it's Mark Zickery, Mr. Sci-Fi, also known as Mark Zickery of Space Command, and it's an early, fairly frosty morning here in LA, and behind me there's a crew from Paramount just striking all the equipment. They just shot an episode of This Is Us on this street in the night, so they had a million lights and cranes and all sorts of stuff. So it's a company town. It's and so there's, I don't know if you can see any of the trucks or anything behind me, but it's pretty fun. I mean, one of the fun things about being in LA is everywhere you go, you'll see folks shooting movies, TV shows, commercials, etc. Student films, for that matter. It's very fun, and of course the studios themselves are quite wonderful to walk around on. Paramount and Warner's and Sony, which used to be MGM, and I love backlots. And when I was a kid, they had the MGM auction, and my mom bought me the catalog so I could actually go and see all the things that were up for auction. It went on forever. It was astonishing. I remember there was one room that was just Roman armor. I got to see the Witch's Hourglass from The Wizard of Oz, and so many wonderful things. And I snuck behind the gate and I went on to the back lot, this enormous back lot where Twilight Zone was shot, where so many great films from the golden age of Hollywood were shot. And they were going to tear down this enormous back lot to make condominiums to fund the building of the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, which was really a shame because it was the greatest back lot ever built. There's a book on it, and you can actually look at all the photos and see what was shot there, or you can just watch Twilight Zone, because so much of Twilight Zone is on those amazing streets that are no longer there. But this Mr. Sci-Fi episode is to talk about some films that came out over the holidays, and a TV show in particular. And it's I didn't chime in about this stuff when these movies came out over the Christmas holiday, because I was very busy with Space Command and finishing the new edition of the Twilight Zone Companion, which has come out on ebook, and I'm just tweaking it now and making sure all the bits and pieces are there. The links to audio and video, there's about 100 new pages of material. There's hundreds of new photos, all sorts of stuff. There's the script that I wrote for Twilight Zone when they brought it back on CBS that the censors pulled the plug on a week before we were going to shoot. It was going to be directed by Doug Hayes, who directed Eye of the Beholder and Howling Man and The After Hours. It's a shame it didn't get made, but you'll be able to read it. And there's also the Spec Mad Men script I wrote with Rod Serling as a character in it that won the 2014 Writers Guild Diversity Awards. So lots of really fun extras, and of course lots of things about Rod and the Twilight Zone when it was shooting, and stories that people have told me after I wrote the book, and so I've included them in the new edition. But that's not what we're here to talk about. What we're here to talk about are 3 science fiction films that came out during the holidays, and a great science fiction TV show that I've been watching, and maybe even we'll talk a little bit about Mars, which is less good, and why it's a little bit of a disappointment, though still interesting. But where I want to start is when I was a kid. This is really a golden age of science fiction. In a way, and my friend Mel Gilden says the golden age of science fiction is 13, and I think that is true, that when we're 13 or younger, the things that come out like Star Trek, like Star Wars, are huge formative events in our lives. But the big difference now is that the major TV shows and movies are science fiction by and large. A lot of the big books are fantasy or science fiction, whereas when I was a kid this was not the case. A terrific science fiction movie or science fiction TV show would come out once every blue moon. I mean, when Star Trek came out, that was a huge sea change and an amazing high quality. And the same with 2001. Star Trek came out in 1966, and 2001 came out in 68. And of course, this was all during the manned space flight missions, and man landed on the moon in 69. So that those years, 66, 67, 68, 69, were amazing for science fiction fans, just because we were seeing our dreams come true in the moon landing, and seeing the future shown to us in an amazing, hopeful way. We thought that 2001 was what we were going to get. We thought that was the future that we were going to have. Watching 2001 was really like watching a postcard from the future, from the real future. And so that's why some of us are so disappointed that we didn't get to Mars, that we didn't get the big space station, that we could go visit the Pan Am Space Clipper, all of that stuff. But, okay, now, moving to 2017, the real 2017. By the way, 2019 is the year that Blade Runner is set in, so 2 more years to get our flying cars and our replicants, so we'll see how we do. Okay, so here's what came out over Christmas. Arrival, Rogue One, and Passengers. And the TV show I want to talk about is Westworld, and we'll talk about Mars a little bit too. So the big blockbuster, of course, was Rogue One, the Star Wars film, and a friend of mine, my friend Ron DeMont, loves it. He thinks it's the best Star Wars film since A New Hope, the first Star Wars film. I don't really agree with that. I think it's a very well-made film. It's kind of Guns of Navarone. If you've never seen that film, it's a similar plot. And the characters are okay. The acting's okay. Alan Tudyk plays a different kind of robot, and I like Alan Tudyk, of course. The look of it is very, very good, of course. Peter Cushing as a CG figure, I would have done it differently. I wouldn't have done CG. He doesn't look real. The eyes don't have it, and the expressiveness isn't there. It's okay, you can kind of go with it. But what I would have done, I think, is I would have seen if there were outtakes and dailies from Star Wars when they shot it, and I would have taken footage, other shots, other angles, if they still exist, and they probably do, and just tweaked those and made those, just basically done shots where we could drop in new dialogue, drop in lines and so forth, using a sound alike, and I think that would have been much more persuasive and much more convincing. But nevertheless, it's an entertaining film. It's a fun film. I think the characters are kind of undeveloped. And the one problem with Star Wars, as opposed to Star Trek, is Star Trek did so many episodes, and particularly when you come back with Next Gen and DS9 and all of them, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of different Star Trek stories, and they're very different from each other. So in one, you might have Kirk becoming an evil Kirk, split into two Kirks, or City on the Edge of Forever, where they go back to the 30s and try and change time, or Wrath of Khan, with the Genesis device. But Star Wars seems to be locked in, the films at least, seem to just be locked into, let's blow up this big thing that's going to destroy planets. Let's go attack that. Let's get the plans on how to destroy that. And it's a very narrow storytelling device, which is why it starts to feel a little tired when they're going over the same gag over and over and over and over again, at least in some of the more recent iterations. I think this will change as time goes on. I'm very interested to see the next Star Wars film with Luke Skywalker and so forth. And it's such a shame we lost Carrie Fisher, but I think they'll certainly be able to continue the stories, and one thing that's fascinating about science fiction is, of course, that they've killed Han Solo off, but in science fiction you can always bring characters back. You can clone them or stitch them together. Darth Maul, he's cut in half, but that doesn't mean we won't see him again. All of those things. I mean, we're not going to see him in the Star Wars movies, I don't think. But the point being that you can even cut a guy in two, and in science fiction, they're back again. So we'll see what happens. But it's an entertaining film, and if you're a Star Wars fan, I think it will kind of massage that place in you that wants Star Wars. So it's a job well done. I think the next Star Wars film will actually be very good. I'm looking forward to it. I want to see what Luke's going to say to Rey, all of that stuff, and they're clearly laying track for some surprises and some revelations, and I think that's all very good. It's very funny when they had the toy come out of the black character who's in Star Wars. They gave him Lando Calrissian's last name, so that may indicate that he's Lando Calrissian's son, or it may have just been a mistake. But we'll find out, or they may change it depending on that reveal. So okay, so there's that, and then there's, of course, a science fiction film that just got nominated for an Oscar, and that's The Arrival. And one thing I will say, without spoiling the plot, is it is fortunate that the main character, played by Amy Adams, has a certain skill that comes in very handy, and I found that extremely convenient. And the film for me is not entirely satisfying. It's more an intellectual journey than anything else, though the point it makes is a fascinating one, which is that if you knew what was going to happen to you, would you still make those choices? Is love worth the sacrifices? And I think that's an interesting point, and it's well written, it's very well acted, and well directed. And for me, the main thing that really gives it some validity, or at least it reassures me, is Denis Villeneuve, the Canadian director who did Arrival. Previously, I'd found his films very bleak. He did, I believe, Enemies. He did Sicario, which I didn't like, and he's doing Blade Runner 2049. And I thought, oh my God, he's such a bleak director. Is Blade Runner going to be the sequel to Blade Runner? Is it going to be very barren, very bleak? Because in reality, the original Blade Runner, which is one of my favorite movies, and which I own part of the city from that my friend Greg Jean built, Blade Runner is a romance, and that's where it departs from the book it's based on, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, because Philip K. Dick was not a romantic, to say the least, and so when it was adapted from Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep into Blade Runner, it actually changed genres. It became a noir romance rather than what it had been, which was sort of dystopic science fiction novel. And both of them examine what it means to be human. But Philip K. Dick's point was that replicants aren't human. They lack empathy. They're cruel and dangerous. Whereas the movie, of course, the point is that that humanity can lie in a human being or a replicant. Compassion is what makes us human, and that's through our actions, and not through whether we're made of organic parts or manufactured parts. And that's so I love Blade Runner. It's a terrific film. So but Arrival at least shows that perhaps the heart, because it does have an emotional heart, perhaps Blade Runner 2014 will have that. I hope it does. And the trailer's interesting, though it's shot in Budapest, doubling, maybe doubling for Los Angeles, I don't know. But the real Blade Runner, the first film, the fact that it was shot on the Warner's back lot and then various locations in LA made it quintessentially a Los Angeles film, and I don't know if the sequel is going to have that, but we'll all know soon enough. We'll find out, won't we? So, but Arrival is definitely worth seeing, and Rogue One is worth seeing if you're a Star Wars fan. And then finally we get to the third big budget release, science fiction release of the holidays, and that was Passengers. Now, Passengers got a very mixed response. I actually liked it, but I understand the concern because, again, a lot of people said because the main character wakes up and he's, marooned on this spaceship going from Earth to an alien planet, and there's all these people who are frozen cryogenically over the hundreds of years, or the 130 years, I guess, whatever it is that the journey will take, 120 years. He wakes up 90 years early, and ultimately because he's so lonely, and this I think is revealed in the trailer, so it's not a big deal. He wakes up Jennifer Lawrence, and a lot of people feel that because he's essentially a stalker, they can't get over that point, and they lose sympathy for him, and they lose sympathy for the movie. A lot of people feel it's like a kind of about Stockholm syndrome, and they don't buy into the romance. And if you're going to like this film, you're going to have to buy into that romance. And for me, I really enjoyed it, mainly because I really liked the spaceship. There's certain settings that you just kind of like wandering around in, and the production design is so beautiful, and the ship is so interesting as just a location, and it looks different from other spaceships in other movies. It's sort of like you almost want to be there. It's like taking a vacation in this huge luxury hotel / mall with a friendly robot bartender. So I enjoyed it. In a way, the characters are rather thinly written, so you kind of when I saw it a second time. And you really kind of see the thinness of the characterization, the thinness of the plot. I still enjoyed it and recommend it, but you may or may not like it. And Chris Pratt is okay. I found it's the kind of same thing as in Jurassic World. I find him, or Guardians of the Galaxy, he's okay, but he's not great. I mean, if you compare him to someone like Harrison Ford in Blade Runner, it's night and day, because there's so much more depth of characterization, just going deeper into who these people are. But still fun, interesting. And also Andy Garcia plays the captain of the ship, and he's in one shot. So I'm very curious if there were scenes cut out, because I'd be very surprised if Andy Garcia is in a movie where he has no lines. And so we'll find out hopefully in the Blu-ray release. So now we come to television, and the two big TV shows, science fiction TV shows that I've been watching is Mars, Ron Howard's Mars, and Westworld. And I did a Mr. Sci-Fi video about Westworld a little time ago when it had just debuted, and I was saying, well, it's off to a good start. Let's see how it does. And Mars, when I was in France at MIPCOM, I saw the first episode of Mars. They screened it. The cast was there. They gave out a book that the show is based on, which is about how we'll get to Mars, how we'll colonize Mars. Fascinating book. And I found out that Wernher von Braun, the famous inventor of the V1 and V2 rockets, who then was instrumental in the Apollo missions to the moon, wrote a book in 1947 or 48 called Das Mars Project, which was about a proposed mission to Mars, and it's basically the template, and brilliantly written and conceived. And Wernher von Braun actually, after he built the Saturn V rocket. Basically, his plan was to build some. It's overbuilt for a trip to the moon. You don't need that big a rocket, and it was mainly he was planning for Mars. And when we landed on the moon, he lobbied very hard for a manned mission to Mars. It was very doable. He felt it could have been done within 10 years, which would have put man on Mars in 1979. But instead, they went with the space shuttle program, sadly, and that's how we ended up where we ended up. And it's a shame, but hopefully we'll rectify that and get to Mars. I had a tour of SpaceX recently. I wear my t-shirt proudly that says Occupy Mars. We'll see how it goes, but I have high hopes, and that we'll land people on Mars in my lifetime. But, so, the Mars TV show, it's very reminiscent of a lot of those movies from the 50s and early 60s of landing a man on the moon. And it's kind of earnest, the same way something like Destination Moon is earnest. It has unlike The Martian got it right. The Martian felt very accurate scientifically, and it also felt, and it's brilliantly designed, brilliantly acted and written and directed, and the character has humor, and so he's someone you want to spend time with. He's always thinking, he's logicking the problem, he's working out the problem, he's coming up with solutions. You feel that he's in that job and deserves to be in that job. So, whereas Mars, they're always kind of like you're kind of despairing and grim and glum, and not like real astronauts are, where real astronauts are thrilled at the adventure and the prospect, and it's just an exciting, daring, bold adventure. And that's something in Space Command that I captured, just how exciting all of this is, how wondrous it all is. And that's sort of what Mars is lacking. It's more like a slog, and they're talking, and realistically, it will be hard to survive on Mars, very hard. But I don't think the people who go there will be grim and, just kind of like dolorous. and so, but the show is interesting in that it goes between real life scientists and real life documentary, and then this extrapolation of a Mars mission in 2037. So all of the science stuff is fascinating. The history of it is fascinating, and the show is good enough to enjoy. And the cast is working hard, and I just think it's under. I don't think it's what it's really going to be like. I think the people will be of sterner stuff and more excited by what they're doing, because it is a bold adventure. And I wish they had kind of captured that a little more, because even in The Martian, that's part of it. What an amazing accomplishment it is, and how thrilling. And it's but again, it's worth watching. Spacesuits, Mars, all of that. And now finally we come to Westworld. Now Westworld, I think, is a terrific show. It's not everyone's cup of tea. Some people haven't liked it, but I think it's phenomenal. I think it's taken the notion of a very kind of creaky movie that Michael Crichton made way back when, of a western town with robots, and it's like an amusement park you can go to. He actually took the same plot and put dinosaurs in it and made it into Jurassic Park some years later. Same exact plot, but this focuses on the robots and what's being done to them, and how they're being killed and tortured and raped over and over again, and how humanity is incredibly flawed, and how you deal with the trauma of that experience. And it's a phenomenal cast. It's wonderfully written and directed by the husband and wife team of Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy, and I just think it's a terrific show. It's on HBO. I actually watched it twice. I watched it once straight through. I actually watched several episodes again, and then I went back and watched it all over again, knowing what the reveals were and the twists and turns were. It has Anthony Hopkins, Ed Harris, Tandy Newton, Rachel Evan Wood, who's fabulous. I mean, everyone is great. The acting is spectacular. The writing is very, very good. And I think it's a huge standout. They're going to be doing a second season. We'll see if it sustains, because Man in the High Castle, which is a show I very much like the first season of, Frank Spotnitz, my friend Frank Spotnitz, is no longer the showrunner. He left over creative differences, and I find the second season not as good. And because people in the first season were subtextual, they weren't saying what was on their mind often. They were, there were currents under what they were saying. I watched the first 2 episodes of the new season. Everyone's saying exactly what they're thinking, which people don't do in real life. It's very on the nose. I'll watch more of it to see what I think. But getting back to Westworld, Westworld, the production values are huge and impressive. I love the music. In my, but not, it has, because it's an HBO show. It has gratuitous nudity, which they thematically deal with. They deal with why certain characters are nude, and the robots and all of that. And it's okay, but again, it's HBO nudity. So, but I still recommend it. I think it's well worth your time. So that's sort of the overview of science fiction in 2016 leading into 2017. Certainly, the real world has some things that we never would have dreamt of in science fiction, and we won't really talk about that. But certainly, it's a great time to be writing about political issues of the day and social issues of the day in science fiction, which is actually what I'm doing. I'm working on rewriting the third Space Command script now, The Great Solar War, because I very much want to be commenting on a lot of what's going on in the world, which is what science fiction is good at, whether it's Star Trek writing about Vietnam, or more recent science fiction writing about what it cares about. Science fiction is a wonderful place to remove us, and it's Twilight Zone did this. Twilight Zone is the granddaddy of doing this, which is you step outside the moment of the day, the issues of the day, you write about it universally, and then it becomes something that people can watch and enjoy and learn from forever. So that's where we are right now, continuing with Space Command, raising money, continuing to do visual effects. If you want to buy a share, let me know. Subscribe to Mr. Sci-Fi. We have hundreds of these videos now where we talk about wonderful science fiction books, TV shows, movies, and Space Command. And that's it for now. So good to talk with you once again. Have a wonderful day, and we'll talk again real soon. Bye-bye.